Welcome to Fright Fix. My name's Suk.
And my name's Celia.
Celia, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I am very good. The rain has finally stopped from last week. I know we were complaining about it, so I'm very happy that the sun is out. And what an episode we have today.
Oh man, I'm really glad we're covering this movie. Been looking forward to this one quite a lot. For me personally, just brimming with quality.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it.
Oh, I'm so glad we never talk about the movies before we record episodes. I'm looking forward to getting your brain over this one.
I am though to just get in contact with you or just say something before we start recording and talk about it, but keep it very on the down low. I get everything out into my notes and then I just leave it.
Yes, absolutely.
You can find Fright Fix anywhere you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Fright Fix Podcast.
This week, Celia and I watched the 2019 film Us, written and directed by Jordan Peele. It stars Lupita Nyong'o as Adelaide Wilson and Red, and Winston Duke as Gabe and Abraham, Shahadi Wright Joseph as Zora and Ombre, and Evan Alex as Jason and Pluto.
I feel like if you haven't seen the film, the fact that you've said two names would be very confusing, but I hope that our listeners have seen the film. Before we continue, I'm going to give the usual spoiler warning. If you haven't watched it, go and see it and come back later and we'll be waiting. So a quick rundown. Accompanied by her husband, son and daughter, Adelaide Wilson returns to the beachfront home where she grew up as a child. Haunted by a traumatic experience from her past, Adelaide grows increasingly concerned that something bad is going to happen. Her worst fears soon become a reality when four masked strangers descend upon their house, forcing the Wilsons into a fight for survival. When their masks come off, the family is horrified to learn that each attacker are doppelgängers of themselves.
Ooh. So, what did you think?
What did I think? Very different from last week's episode, which I felt a little lackluster about and didn't have much to say. I have quite a lot to say about this one, I think.
Yes.
It felt right up my street. It's exactly what I look for in a horror film. It felt refreshing and unpredictable. And if you know me, you know that I don't like being able to guess the end of a film. I really don't. It doesn't matter what the end of the film is. If I can predict it, I'm like, yeah, okay, you did what I thought you were going to do, you know? And so having a film that the storyline is very different from something I've seen before made me really enjoy it. And I am a little bit biased because I love Jordan Peele, the director and writer. Did you ever watch Key and Peele?
Yeah, like every single episode, yeah.
Every single episode I could probably recite. So seeing him move from comedy to horror is really interesting. And it's a really brave move, I think. But the fact that he is a comedic writer made the bits of comedy within this film actually funny. And I thought that was really nice.
Yes.
The fact that I did have a bit of a chuckle. Yes, it's a horror film. And yes, it deals with a lot of serious stuff. It was also humorous.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about some of the lines already and just laughing to myself.
There's something so subtle about it. I think it really shows that comedy isn't easy and only certain people can do it right, because you do see horror films where they try and be a little bit funny and you think, no, that didn't work. But in this film, it really does.
No, it's nice interplay between kind of giving the audience a false sense of security with humor and then hitting them over the head with some scares.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did see a few reviews actually saying that it feels satirical because of the jokes in it. But I do think that there's a nice balance between the comedy and also the quite heavy horror. It's still really creepy. It still really sends a shiver up my spine. But that doesn't mean that it can't also have bits that make you chuckle.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
What did you think?
Man, I'm just going to put it out there. I think the movie's a masterpiece. I found it very entertaining. It's, as you said, it's scary. I thought some bits were quite reflective of society. It's the performances are great. For me, I thought the visuals were great.
Yeah.
Just magnificent sound design, and I quite enjoyed the soundtrack as well. It's been like a while since I watched a horror movie where I've screamed at the TV, like you know, when like the little girl's walking away from her family at the beginning of the movie and she like goes to the ghost house and I'm like, what are you doing? Who
Why
does?
would you do that?
I mean, it's a typical horror trope, but the fact that I just like it when a film kind of forces me to interact with the screen like that, and I think it just shows that maybe that in such a short period of time, the film had developed the characters enough for me to even care to scream at the TV. So yeah, one thing I really, really, really liked about the movie a lot was the sound design. I thought it was magnificent, and in my opinion, it's right up there with like blockbuster action movies. So not in terms of like just loud or lots going on. So I got a new TV a few months ago, and like a sound bar type system-y type thing, and it's the first thing I've watched where I felt like the entire range of the speaker system was being used. And especially like just even something simple like the opening title scene where it starts off on the rabbit really small and then the camera pulls away and it reveals all the other rabbits. Like the music was it kind of built on its like the music was layered and kind of built, like started very quiet and started adding more and more, and just as the camera revealed that wide shot of all the rabbits, just the sound was just so clean, but there was so much depth. I can't quite explain it. So I feel like I need to go watch loads of movies now with just this improved sound quality, which I've never really experienced before. It's the first time I've ever experienced that at home. And I kind of just treat myself to something like a fancy TV and a fancy sound system, because I thought, Lord knows how long we're going to be stuck at home.
I know.
And I can't go to the cinema, and I don't want to risk going to the cinema. So why don't I just bring the cinema home to me?
Bring it home to you. Yeah, I like that. You have to try a few other films, and if they're all magnificent, you think, oh, it's not just this film. But I do think that the sound, the music in this was pretty brilliant. Even though I don't probably have as good a sound system as you.
Oh no, it's a budget little thing, but it's better way than I had before.
No, it was great. I think one thing about this film as well that I thought I really liked, and I think I spoke about this in a different episode where I said they didn't do this, was they developed the evil characters, the villains, quite a lot in this film, and you get to know them as characters. They're not, because you could think of this as a slightly zombie trope of, they have to fight for their survival, they have to kill these, in quotes, zombies, but you never get to know zombies, you never get to feel for them, but you do get that in this film.
And so with the doppelgängers that you get to know them. With the
doppelgängers, you get to know their personalities almost. And even if you're not connected to them, you don't think that they should survive. It's just nice to have more of a prolonged relationship with the villains of the movie. And I thought that was a really interesting thing about this film that I liked as well.
Yes, you make a really, really, really good point there, actually. The fact that you get to know the doppelganger characters, and we do get to spend a bit of time with them. There was a certain point in the movie where I just felt, am I rooting for the wrong people? And so I don't know if you've got any themes you wanted to discuss for this episode or anything. I didn't want to step on your toes or anything.
Go ahead.
But it just kind of felt like, I don't know, I can't quite articulate what I'm thinking, but I couldn't help feeling that there was some kind of privileged versus unprivileged kind of comparison being drawn. And like there was a point in the movie where I think when Kitty and Josh, I forget the other couple, Elisabeth Moss couple, when they're being killed or whatever, and I was kind of thinking, we're so dedicated to the lead characters of this movie and like kind of want them to survive and want them to be safe and everything, that part of me thought, wait a minute, they're the guys with the privilege and they've got everything, like, but yet these people that just want to see the sky, we're rooting against them. And it was just like, I don't know if there's some kind of like programming going on, or I'm not articulating this properly, but there's something there about, I just had this weird moment, out of body experience, where I felt like I was rooting for the wrong person in this film.
No, I completely get that, because they haven't actually done anything wrong. Obviously, they start killing people. Before that point, they were the victims. They were locked underground in tunnels. And like you said, they wanted to see the sky. They wanted to be like everybody else. They had this kind of upstairs, downstairs view of the world where they were locked away and it wasn't their fault. And so they're not kind of vicious ghosts who are just trying to mess with people. Their agenda seems to be that they've almost come to a breaking point. And I'm not saying that what they did afterwards of kind of total destruction is good, But I see what you mean, that there is something behind that. And I think I definitely found that with the scene where Pluto, who is the doppelganger of the boy, I don't know why I remember Pluto and not the son's name, where he walks backwards into the fire.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I felt really sorry for him and his family, because they're still a family, even though they're supposed to be soulless. It burns in the flames. And I did feel a little bit like, it feels like he doesn't have control over his life, and that all he's known is this kind of horrible underground existence. And then he's burnt his face is burnt, because I think, he loved playing with fire, and then he burns, and it's like, that's his life done. I didn't feel that satisfaction of, you've got another one, like a zombie film where they smack someone over the head and then you're like, yes, another one.
No,
a bit of sadness there.
No, absolutely, because when, like in any good monster movie or zombie movie, when you see the monster's head bashed in or something, and you see the guts come out of the head and everything, it's like, it's quite satisfying. But in this movie, every death felt uneasy and kind of like it felt like there was real consequence, and it felt like you were essentially just condemning a family to death one by one. It was
who seemed to not really understand the consequences of what they're doing. There's something missing, obviously. They're not completely human, so there's a bit of twisted innocence there somewhere.
No, absolutely. I mean, just what did you make of the performances and the casting, the acting in the movie?
Well, I'm sure we'll probably say the same thing, but throughout the film, I forgot that it was one character playing two roles. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant, all of them. I felt like the way that they differentiated the characters was so interesting. It wasn't just their mannerisms. There was a slight change in skin color, I noticed.
Oh, really?
They made the doppelgangers slightly lighter in color, and I thought that was really interesting.
Did they? I didn't notice.
I think they did. I think it was lighter makeup or something that kind of, it was so subtle but so interesting. And obviously the kind of smiles on their faces and the noises that they made. And the way that they spoke. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it that made me feel so creeped out.
Those deranged smiles, those big eyes just kind of open. It's terrifying, really.
Absolutely terrifying. And the fact that they walked everywhere as well. Did you notice, like, they don't run after them? They don't go, like a zombie.
No.
They walk really fast towards the characters. And apart from Pluto, who kind of runs like a dog almost. And I think that's that uncanniness of the fact that they're humans, but they're slightly altered humans. So your brain is trying to make them human, and then they do things that are very inhuman, and that's what creeped me out. I was like, oh yeah, it's so clever the way they do it. And I don't think they overdid it. I think that there was enough subtlety in the characters, but it also was enough to make them scary. I thought they were brilliant. The doppelgangers.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a nice a kind of unique take on a horror movie villain, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you, but I got really connected to the family as well. Not the doppelganger family, the family.
Yeah.
Because they were so lovely and they felt like a real family. And it's so refreshing to, I often gripe with adults pretending they're teenagers and writing teenage characters or, kid characters. And you think, no child would speak like that, in their family. But actually, this family felt real. It felt like they had real conversations and that you were just glimpsing into their lives. And each one of them had their own character and were very, very different. And I thought that was brilliant. It felt like Jordan Peele had spent time not just on the main characters, but on every single one of them, and thought, who are they and what are they going to bring to the film?
Nobody felt left behind from the main cast. And as you were saying about Jordan Peele writing, like, just everything about the script felt very deliberate and very crafted. Like, it just didn't look like there was much compromise. And there's so many good lines in this movie, like the bit when Lupita's character is saying, like, I don't feel like myself, and then the husband, Gabe, is it Gabe? Yeah. He looks back at it and goes, I think you look like yourself.
I got that as, yeah, you look like yourself. And I thought at the time, that's a weird way of saying that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And there's just so many other cool lines in the film.
Mm.
Like, oh man, you know the bit where the son says, "Maybe you can just kiss my anus." Like that made me laugh out loud. Like it's
Yeah.
such a ridiculous line. Like trying to make like a really common phrase like "kiss my ass" or something, kiss
Yeah.
my ass into something more refined, but somehow making it sound even more ridiculous. Like that had Jordan Peele written all over
It
it.
really did. And that is what a, 10-year-old would say. And that's what is so good about it. I also think that Winston Duke, who played
Yes.
Gabe, he was
Mhm.
really funny as well.
He's so
As a-
likable.
So likable.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he wasn't always, the man of the house kind of character. He was also kind of relying on Adelaide, his wife, for a
Mm.
lot of it. And she had a lot of the strength that maybe in other films they would have kind of made sure that the dad had that, that kind
Yes.
of, but he was much more of the comic relief. And I thought yeah, there were lots of moments that he said things.
Yeah, I could kind of connect to his character quite a bit more than like normal dad characters, where he didn't look like he was an old father, but
Mm.
he was like a youngish dad, and there's a vulnerability about him, and it just felt like he was still trying to figure it out himself, the whole
Yeah.
fatherhood thing, and he's that balance between trying to be a father to your kids and trying to be their friend at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just made him so much more likable, in my opinion, and I felt really connected to him quite a lot actually. And do you ever watch Modern Family?
I've seen episodes, but I've never followed it.
But he reminded me so much of the character Phil Dunphy,
Right.
and just that kind of father who tries.
Mm.
And yeah, I really liked him a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's why we rooted for the characters so much, because we genuinely liked them. And they had bits of, when Zora, the daughter, decides she's going to drive the car because her dad's injured, her mum's got handcuffs off, she's going to drive. And it's such a family moment. If you took away the survival aspect and the fact that their doppelgangers are coming after them to kill them, that's a really sweet moment in a family where,
I was thinking like, dude, there's like people trying to kill you and you're here just like arguing about who's going to drive.
But again, it's the unpredictability. I would never think that would be a scene in a survival film where there's like basically a serial killer coming towards you with a scissors. That's the sort of argument that's going to happen, and that's what I like about this film. And it did annoy me because I did see a lot of negative reviews for this film.
Oh, really? I've not read any.
Loads of negative reviews saying that it's ridiculous, that it's comedic as well as trying to be a horror film.
Really? I didn't think the comedy got in the way of the horror or anything.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's not, what were those films called? They were satirical horror films. I just forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? There was like a series of films and they were...
What, Scary Movie?
Scary Movie.
Yeah.
That's clearly comedy over horror.
Oh, that's just like parody, isn't it?
It's just complete parody. Whereas this is comedy and horror. And I think it's really hard to do both of those things well.
Yeah. I think the last movie I remember watching that just springs to mind that did comedy and horror well, I thought, was the first Scream movie.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, you get that because it doesn't take away from the fact that it's scary. In fact, it brings more to it because it sticks in your mind as a film that's different from the others.
Yeah. It just helps you connect to the film. I mean, when it's done right, it helps you connect and just immerses you into the movie a bit more. And it's not like the comedy was done at the expense of the characters or the expense of the story. It was just little, kind of just like, when you're just putting a little bit of salt here, a little bit of pepper there. It's just
exactly. It just seasons the film and just makes it a little bit tastier.
You say it's so much better. I just wanted to add one thing. Like, actually, I'm probably going to add a couple of things, but one thing that I'm just going to go back to my new TV again.
Yeah, just keep doing it.
But there's something I noticed is, when they're at the boardwalk at the beginning of the movie, like, when movies are shot at night.
Yeah.
Like night cinematography, I find is really hit and miss generally in movies. Like, but I feel like this movie just, I don't know, this movie gets that night. So there was something beautiful about that night sequence. Like the blacks were so deep and rich, and I've
Mm.
just not seen anything quite like it before. And the colors of like the lights and everything were just so vibrant.
Mm.
And I've just, man, there's something about this cinematography for just a horror movie. You just would not think of it. You just would not think that a movie like this would get that much kind of attention to the visuals.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, that really stood out to me. I think the last time, I mean, like for example, like the Shining, what we watched a little while ago, I mean, that had a lot of attention to detail to the visuals, and I feel like this matched it, if not surpassed it, in terms of the visual quality.
And it's doubly amazing the fact that they had quite a small budget for this film. I think it was about $20 million.
Wow. I bet it made like 10 times that much.
I think it made 220 million.
Oh, there we go.
11 like that.
11,
so it just shows. But yeah, like the fact that they were able to do so much, it just kind of shows that the commitment to a film, it does surpass the budget, and that you can do things.
That's another thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that's another thing about horror movies in general, is that why they keep coming back and they're so profitable, because they literally spend nothing to make them, and they regularly make back like 10 times their budget or 5 times their budget. Like you'd never see that happen with like a super or a big Hollywood blockbuster type thing. They just about break even or whatever.
Yeah, that's so true. This is probably like the best business decision a director or a production company could make.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Blumhouse movies are so... Sorry, I don't know if you can hear a lawnmower in the background. Someone's starting to mow.
It's summer.
Yeah, I think that's why the Blumhouse movies do so well, because they spend nothing on them. And I think there was something about Jordan Peele wanted Blumhouse to produce this movie.
Oh.
But I think it's something along the lines of that, his studio normally funds smaller movies, not big movies. It just don't have enough money. But then the studio that produced this movie, like they kind of contracted Blumhouse to help on this movie, which I think is the first time that he's ever done that or something. So that's they wanted him. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing. So
yeah. Well, I am wondering if you had a favorite scene overall, because I think we've both got elements that we would pick out and say, like, the characters are brilliant, the acting is incredible. But were there any scenes in particular that you thought really stood out?
I mean, there is one scene which captivated me, like where I was being sucked into the TV, and that was the bit when Red was giving her speech about when she was telling the story about there was this girl in her shadow.
Yeah, like
that scene. I was just, and as you mentioned earlier, like you do forget that. So this is Lupita giving like 2 performances, and I kept forgetting that she was the same actress doing a double role. Like just like the tone of her, she had this kind of raspy voice going on, and just her eyes were just like piercing. It was just I mean, that just the writing, the acting of that sequence, I don't know, just the decisions she made in her performance. It was just magnificent, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I love the way in that scene, there's probably a technical term for it, but Red was right by the camera, and then you could see Adelaide further back, and you could see both of them in one shot as Red was talking.
Yes, yeah, there's that. They were both in focus, like there was Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I got a
frame, but Red was there was like a blurred effect around Red's face.
Yeah, I did notice that shot. I think what they did was, clearly they had to shoot those bits separately. Because she can't be in 2 places at once. But I think they're 2 separate shots that have been joined, and I think that blur in the middle is the point where the shots were kind of glued together.
Sense. Yeah.
Because I think if you got your camera out on your phone, I don't think you could achieve that shot. You couldn't have both of those locations in focus at once.
In focus. I think that's what it made it a bit of a weird shot in a good way, but it was a bit weird because they were both in focus.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't both be in focus, but it was quite dramatic.
It was very striking, but absolutely. Yeah. What was your? Did you? Well, I assume you had a favorite scene, and I want to know about it right now.
I had 2. I had one that was more of a symbolism, and then one which I thought was kind of my favorite scene. I think the first thing that I didn't realize was my favorite until at the end was the bit where Red forces Adelaide's face onto the mirrored coffee table. Do you remember that bit? So there's a bit where they're still in the house, in the beach house.
Yeah.
and Red forces Adelaide's head onto this glass coffee table, and the coffee table smashes.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where you see both of their faces in the reflection of the glass, and it's a really clever scene because you can see both of them at once and both of their faces. It's the first time you see them next to each other. So you see like the terror of Adelaide, and then you see I don't even know how to describe the doppelgangers because they're not expressionless. They're full of expression, but without any clear emotion. Just great.
Yeah.
But when we find out at the end, big spoiler alert, so please go and watch the film before I say this, that Adelaide and Red swapped places when Adelaide was a child, the fact that the reflection cracked, I thought, taking my, greater meaning, whatever, it was showing that reality is distorted and that you can't trust what you see, because that broken reflection is showing them as they actually are, which is the other way around. I just thought, when I look back at that scene, I thought that was a really clever indication that not everything's as it seems.
There were loads of little clues throughout the movie of that.
I think if we watched it again, we'd be able to notice all of those things. And because I think there's a constant reminder of Jeremiah 11:11, which is, there's a guy, a homeless guy on the beach, and he has that on his placard thing. It says 11:11, and then the clock at one point shows 11:11. And then so I looked it up, and in the Bible, it's the prophecy of people being punished for their sins by having evil brought upon them. And I think that was another hint of, they'd swap places. And so she'd forced Adelaide to go underground, and she's now coming back to kind of, I don't know what the word is, repent for her sins, kind of making her realize what she'd done. So I thought that was really clever. I really liked that. I think another thing I really liked, and I think it goes back to when I did dance at school, because they would have loved this, when they did the above and below scene of the carnival. And so above, they were having a normal carnival scene and everyone was having a time. And then underneath, they had this horrible interpretation of what's going on up above. Really creepy, people on a roller coaster, but they're not. They're just in a line making really weird faces, playing whack-a-mole, but they're just kind of hitting their head against the wall. I mean, GCSE dance, they would have loved that. They would have thought that was brilliant. And I've never seen something like that. And I think the actors who did that really put their all into it, because it did feel so strange. And I think that was the point, was to feel really weird. I loved that. I loved how different that was from anything I've seen before.
Because on the surface they all look normal. They're like having a good time, smiling and everything, but beneath, in the underground, they're all kind of got these deranged looks on their face, and their movements are far more exaggerated, and like almost something out of like a Tim Burton movie or something.
Exactly, it really was. And I think that was also a really amazing feat for Jordan Peele to direct, because he had to make sure that those scenes aligned. So make sure that the people were wearing the same costume, it's the same characters, they're in the same positions, and as the camera moves, because they did a very clean shot of what it looks like above and what it looks like below, and the camera's continuously moving, so it feels like everything's connected and it's all one seamless motion. And to be able to, because they must have sat down and looked at every single one of those scenes and said, right, let's make sure that character stood right there, and then they're stood right here, and they're wearing this, they're doing this. The coordination and the planning and exactly. It must have taken a lot to get that to feel real and to not feel disjointed, or that it's very clear that these are the same people doing different things.
Absolutely. I mean, touching on the symbolism, or the kind of the visual metaphors, I don't know if that's the phrase or anything, but like something I found quite interesting was, like you got our lead family, they have their kind of like quarrels and quibbles and little things, and everything just feels really chaotic with them, just like a regular family. There's a lot of dysfunction, disorganization, and just normal people. But when you first see the doppelganger family, they're all standing there in line, and the moment that Dad comes out with his baseball bat, Red must, I think I don't know what she says to the family, but they all kind of disperse, like some kind of like SAS military team or something like this.
Operation, yeah.
Yeah, like they're like this kind of well-oiled machine, very coordinated and very just the opposite of the family. And another thing I thought that's quite interesting is how the family, despite their kind of chaos, they still got each other's back. They still care about each other,
Absolutely.
And then you cut to Kitty and Josh's family, who are like, so they essentially repeating the same situation that the lead family did. So they hear a noise outside. Kitty's saying to Josh, "Go check outside. There's a noise." And Josh is just like, "I don't care. Well, check it tomorrow. It's probably just some raccoons or what. I don't know. I don't know exactly." But the fact that there was no real connection between them, they didn't really seem to respect each other or really like each other. And same when you see the daughters, like the bloody twins from the sisters from The Shining all over again.
You're about to say it.
I said it before you were going to say it. And like just the whole thing, just they just seem like the total opposite to the lead family. And also there's also when you see Kitty and Josh, when you first see them in their house, like the way the camera's on them is they're on different levels. So she's upstairs far away from Josh. So it's just even though it's all visual and it's not explicit, I think it just helps build that image in the viewer's mind, just passively, even just to complement the dialogue that goes along with it. And
I'd never thought of that. That's such an interesting, like the family dynamics that it shows, and that the family that gets out at the end is the one that kind of worked, but then it kind of subverts that because it's not Adelaide, it's Red who's driving away with the family, and I think their son has figured out it's not his mum, or well, it is his mum. It's very confusing.
It is his mum,
It is his mum, but she also is the doppelganger.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes that, like, yes, the family who survived are the family that did work well together and they worked with each other. But then it leaves you thinking, well, are they better? Are they gonna survive? Because it does leave a lot of questions.
It's another thing I noticed was when she walks into the House of Mirrors at the very beginning of the movie, and then again at the very end, I think there's a big sign that says something like "Find Yourself."
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
I just find it quite amusing how that kind of has two separate meanings at both bookends of the movie. It's like it takes on new meaning. It goes like kind of from figuratively to literally,
because
she's actually looking for herself in the House of Mirrors. So I thought that was quite amusing, to be honest.
Because it changed, the actual attraction name changed.
Yes.
But the sign that said "Find Yourself" stayed. So I think like that, it was a really nice touch. And it's the same as what you were saying about you look like yourself. It's very obvious imagery about you and who you are and things like that. And they've taken that and kind of hinted to what's to come.
So another thing that I thought was quite interesting was I don't know if this was a part of the movie's intention or anything. It was just so touching upon the the rabbits inside the cages, and they're kind of in that subterranean area with all the doppelgangers. And I can only presume that like some kind of, I don't know, lab animals or something. I mean, I wasn't 100% sure about that, but it almost felt like the lab animals or the lab rats taking back control or kind of overthrowing the people experimenting on them. And I could just be reaching there and.
No, you're taking over, honestly. I've never thought about these things.
That's impossible. Don't ever let this happen.
Swap roles. Yeah, you're right. It is there's a freedom to it, because at the beginning all the rabbits are in those cages, like you said, in that beginning scene where they kind of pan out and they've got hundreds of rabbits in cages. And then when Adelaide finally finds this kind of basement tunnel system, the rabbits are everywhere and they've got out of their cages. And so it's the same thing with the doppelgangers. They've kind of stayed in their cage of underground and they've risen to their freedom, I suppose, which is the outside world.
And there's another little touch that I noticed was, when I think she's leaving. I might be getting the order of this wrong, but there's a bit where I think Adelaide is leaving, or it might have been Red, I don't know, but one of them walks towards the escalator. And she looks at the escalator, but the stairs are going down rather than up. And I just felt like it's that kind of like so the people that don't have the privilege, so even for them to come out, it's still an uphill.
Hard work.
struggle. Yeah. So I
And
thought
they're not
that was.
supposed to, there's no way out. There was never built an up escalator for them to be able to get
It's
out.
just the illusion of it. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just I don't. The thing is, I don't know if half this stuff is intentional or not. But it just fits and it just works.
I feel like it's a bit like The Shining again, where there's so much that could be interpreted in so many different ways, and people have interpreted it in so many different ways that's what makes a film live on, is that if you explain everything, and we'll get on to it in a second about things that we didn't particularly like, but when you leave stuff to the imagination, it is good because it means that you do have to question it, and that lore can be created and conspiracy theories can be created.
Yes.
And people can have different, very opposing opinions, but it keeps the conversation going about the film. And I think that's something that I love about horror films in general, is that they do that quite often, is that you kind of get an explanation about what this paranormal entity is, but there are questions that are left to the imagination, and then it's up to you to think about, A, do you believe in them? Because that's something that's a big part of why people like horror. And B, what do you think of their interpretation of what a ghost could be, or what a monster could be.
Sure. I think there's one of the hallmarks of a good or a solid or a competent horror film is when it does relate back to something real, something relatable like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was there anything that you didn't like about the film?
I knew this question was going to come up, and I mean, strictly speaking, there wasn't anything I didn't like about the movie. In all honesty, kind of surprised myself, especially knowing that the previous movie that Jordan Peele had done, Get Out, which I thought was really enjoyable. The bit I found a little bit annoying, not annoying, I don't know. It kind of just took me out of the film a little bit, was the fight scene at the end, the fight scene in the corridor
between Red and Adelaide.
Yeah. So, and more specifically, so the fight scene I thought was fine, them chasing each other, and I thought that was fine. But the bit that kind of annoyed me a little bit was just the intercutting between that and the ballet clips, the ballet dancing.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some deeper meaning there or maybe some shallow meaning that I just didn't understand, but I just thought it was a bit excessive, and it just felt like maybe they had this chase scene at the end that didn't work, and to make it a bit more dynamic, they decided to intercut it with some ballet. I mean, I don't know if that's what their intention was, but it's I don't know, that just didn't sit well with me.
Would you have preferred it if it was a bit more of a raw scene where it's there with the characters and you stay with them, there's no flashbacks, it's just them kind of having this very intense fight?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. It's just because the rest of the film up until that point isn't like that. There is no crazy cutting. It just felt very out of place for me personally.
Yeah, that's understandable. I feel like maybe all I could think of in that scene was, when you're arguing with somebody and the things that annoy you about that person come to your brain, and it's all you can think about is how unjust this situation is or how much they've annoyed you.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that ballet scene being cut was kind of in Red's head, of seeing how lovely Adelaide's life was compared to hers, and the fact that she could do this ballet dancing. And it's kind of her anger of, that situation that she could never have. She could never be.
Right. Yeah.
And it was cutting to her rage almost. That's all I could think of really for that.
No, that makes total sense. I think you might be right, actually. I don't know, just kind of took me out of the whole experience. But...
Yeah, especially if it's not part of how the film has been going the whole time. Having something that's very different is like, we've already got a lot to process anyway. We've just been told about this whole kind of clone situation experiments. I think we've got enough to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker. It was just weird. Yeah. What about yourself? I mean, was there anything you didn't like about the movie? Any scene or anything?
I didn't have any scenes I didn't like because I loved the way that it was shot and everything. But it was quite interesting when I was speaking to my boyfriend afterwards about the film, and he asked me to explain what the doppelgängers were.
Yeah.
I was like,
did he watch the movie with you?
No, he didn't. So because he's too scared. He just wanted me to tell him what the doppelgängers were. And I was like, right. So they were an experiment. And then they were cloned and they didn't have souls. And they were kept underground in these tunnels. But then I kept having questions about how could they, so I get if they were clones of the people in the 80s, which I think is when Adelaide was younger.
Yeah.
And they've got the mother and father as clones as well. And then it made me think, because then he was asking, well, how could they have made sure that the people had children together, that the clones had the same children with the people above?
Yeah.
And did they clone everyone in America because everybody seems to have a clone?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of brought up a lot of questions where I thought, yeah, there are a few things which I think maybe needed to have a little bit more of either an explanation or a bit more to go off, because it didn't make sense that I'd get if you clone people at a certain period of time, that those people would look exactly the same now as they did to their doppelganger. But yeah, how do you then have the same children as your doppelganger with the same person?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like I said, is everybody cloned? Is everybody in these tunnels? Just a few questions where I thought, I don't know the answer to them.
That's a really, really good point. I mean, no, you're 100% right. I hadn't thought about that until you just mentioned it right now, to be honest. And there's two things in the film where I think they can maybe get away with it. Like, so right, the opening of the film has this message on the screen about there's like 1 million miles of tunnels under the US or whatever. Nobody knows who hides down there or whatever. So I thought, okay, if they did clone everyone, maybe
they could all fit down there.
All these tunnels, Who knows? I don't even know if that's true or not, if they do have like all those tunnels under the US. But, and the other thing is, I think when Red is given the speech, or the speech about the shadow, and the little girl. And I think maybe just in this movie's internal logic of the world that this film's set in, that when someone is born, their shadow or their doppelganger is born. And maybe maybe the doppelgangers just copy and follow, and just they're kind of tied or bound or tethered to the people upstairs. And maybe the fact that Red and Adelaide had swapped positions at that such young age, maybe that's because she was from outside that shadow world. She was the only one who had the ability to form that uprising. Yeah. And she'd seen that Hands Across the World video in the 80s or whatever. And only she, because she was from up there, only she could have like recreated that or had that even as inspiration, Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
No, that makes that does make sense, actually. Thinking about, like you said, that once upon a time speech, she does say, whenever you did something, I did something. So yeah, maybe it's a bit more in the realm of fantasy than I thought, because I thought it was
quite possible.
Like they're humans and they're just cloned, basically. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there must be some kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's not fantasy, but something going on that's
just not suspension of disbelief a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, and that's what annoyed me about reading these bad reviews, is that nobody was giving that kind of, okay, well, it is also a film that deals with things that are not in the realms of reality as we know them. Yeah. So yes, it is a bit different. And there was one other thing that maybe you have an answer to this as well, because you kind of
I mean, I'm just making it up as I go along.
But so I understand that the doppelgangers are the kind of clones of real humans, but they don't have souls. And I get that. But Adelaide and Red swap places when she was 6 or 7. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have a soul. So the Red that's in the film, who's the actual Adelaide, she acts like all the other clones, like she doesn't have a soul. And I do understand that she's been down there for so long that it could have kind of twisted her brain. Sure. But there is a part of me that's thinking, could you be so removed from humanity that you become soulless? Or would you stand out from the rest of them because you do have a soul, if that's what we're going off, is that this film is about the souls of people. They still have that, but something's changed. I don't know. That was another thing I was thinking of. I was like, I don't know. That's
a really, really good question.
Because it is still her.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I mean, she was down there all that time. Maybe she assimilated, or the same way how, I mean, this is going to sound really stupid, but it's the same way if you spent a year in America, you'd probably start picking up the American accent. Yeah. But she would have spent like 20 something years down there, and maybe just revenge and torture and just, I mean, I know with me, if I spend just even 5 minutes waiting for a pot to boil or a kettle to boil, like I go crazy.
You become soulless and grab your scissors and go running around to your next door neighbor.
Yeah. Exactly. I felt so much empathy for the villains in this. Yeah, but
I know. I guess that it's just supposed to be that she's been down there for so long that she.
Yeah. I mean, I have no answer for it. I think it's a really good question.
Maybe it's a comment on humans and the fact that we don't have a soul, and the fact that we can be completely different to what we think we can be, and that we are molded by our surroundings much more than we want to admit to ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, talking about comment, maybe some of our viewers could comment on the damn Instagram picture and explain it to us.
Yeah, if anybody's got any answers, please let us know, because it would really help us out. And I'm sure there's something. I mean, I pride myself on being able to see into the deeper meanings of things, but I think, sometimes I can admit that I'm not sure what the answer is. And this is one of
perfect 100% of the time. So
exactly. Well, we can only try. I did make a comment to myself where Adelaide makes noises throughout the film that are very reminiscent of Red. I don't know if you noticed.
No, I don't remember.
Oh, it's really clever. So there's a bit where Adelaide has to go back into the neighbor's house to kill Kitty, I think it is.
Yes, yeah.
Because her son couldn't do it, or hadn't done it properly.
One of the daughters, I think.
Oh, was it one of the daughters? Yeah.
It might have been Kitty, actually. No, sorry, ignore me. Carry on. Yeah.
One of them. And as she's hitting her over the head, or she's stabbing, actually she grabs the scissors, which again, symbolism of she is actually a doppelganger. She grabs the scissors, she starts stabbing her, and she makes that kind of grunting sound that the doppelgangers make. And her son is stood at the door and watches her and sees that, and there's a bit of like a scared look on his face. It's a really clever bit.
And I
think that's, and she does it again when she's killing Red, the version of Red, where she puts her arms around her neck and pulls her handcuffs around her neck. She makes the noise again, and it's the same noise that the doppelgangers make.
Right.
And I'd written this whole thing about the fact that we're more like the soulless doppelgangers than we think we are, and I'd made all this stuff. It's not. It's just the fact that she is actually the doppelganger.
But at the time, you were thinking.
I was thinking that it was supposed to be a symbolism of we're not so far removed from the villains as we think we are. Yeah. We're actually all like that, which is kind of what it says, but not entirely. But I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, you got me there. I need to watch that bit again. I need to notice that bit again. Yeah. I didn't know. No, that's a good spot if that's the case. Yeah.
I redeemed myself.
You have
something.
No, I love learning from you when it comes to these kind of things. To be honest,
you've taught me way more in this episode than I have. Believe me.
All fluke. I don't expect lightning to strike twice. So. Yeah, it was something that just not strictly about this film, but something that just really annoyed me. And the whole family standing outside and everything. When our heroes first meet the doppelgangers, like that's just a great image. Like seeing their silhouettes of the doppelgangers outside, and you're just wondering who the hell are they. It's such a freaky thing when the boy says like, "There's a family outside on our driveway."
Yeah,
and everyone's like, "What?"
So matter of fact, yeah.
It's such a terrifying thing. If someone said that to me, there's someone at our front door just looking. It's terrifying. But what just annoyed the hell out of me was that was all in the trailers for the film.
Again, I think we said this for a different episode where they just give away the best bits.
Like, how amazing would this film have been if that was the surprise? Like, it would have been so cool. I just felt like it just suck the air out of the whole experience, and it's just it's
so annoying. That is what is different about this film, is that the evil characters are us. Oh my god. But we already knew that. You're right.
And I mean, the one last thing that frustrated me, and this is the thing that frustrated me the most, and this is the worst mistake any movie can make, and sadly this movie is guilty of it. And there was a bit in the movie where you could hear dogs barking, and that set Wanda off, and one would not stop barking for ages. I had to pause the film, calm her down, and then resume.
So funny. So Wanda is Sook's dog, lovely little puppy. I thought you were going to say something that I'd completely missed, and that I was like, I'm so annoyed I'd never thought of that.
You did miss that. You should have been hot on that.
They should have had a dog warning. It it's a PG-18 plus dogs over 3.
Man, it's like anytime doorbells go off on TV or dogs start barking, oh my goodness, she just goes wild. Yeah, I'm sure she's just trying to communicate or protect or whatever. I don't know, but it's quite kind of amusing.
She's not just being annoying. She's got a purpose to it. No, this is completely off topic, but I always get that. I hate it when radio stations, when you're driving, put horns, like beeping horns in their adverts and things. Because I always think there's a car behind me that's beeping, or they put sirens or something, and I think, oh my god, I've got to get out the way. So I'm on Wanda's side with that. It's very annoying.
I can imagine that's probably really annoying. That's probably why I only listen to like old people radio stations.
So they're not going to do anything that might surprise or upset anyone.
I think if their views are heart attack or something. Yes,
it's very casual. Yeah. So I suppose to end, what would you give this film out of 10? Because I feel like our last episode we gave it such bad scores that I feel like we should redeem our podcast a little bit, because now we have a film that we really like.
Well, right now with this movie, I would give it, look, it's very ambitious, especially coming hot off the heels of Get Out.
Yeah.
And I feel like Peele made a lot of brave decisions with this film. He could have played it safe, but he tried something new. And the performances were great. Visuals and sound were awesome. And it's a very well thought out movie, very intricate. I mean, you've pointed out a whole bunch of stuff that I just didn't notice. And I've pointed out some things you hadn't thought of. And it's like, for me, I'm going to go out there, put my reputation on the line. And I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10.
Very nice. We should have a buzzer sound, a 9 sound. Yeah. Okay.
What about you? What would you go and hit me?
This feels so serious. I feel like it's the life or death of the movie. If we give it a bad score, no one's gonna.
No. You gotta stick to your guns.
True to myself. No, I completely agree with you. I think the things we said about The Shining was that the acting was great, but the characters almost failed them a little bit, and that the character development wasn't there. Well, we've got all of that in this film. We've got amazing actors who do an amazing job doing 2 roles. Their character development is also brilliant, and the way that their relationships make you want to be friends with them. I think the comedy is an aspect that I don't think has been justly reviewed. I think that it's brilliant. Like you said, visuals, everything. The only thing for me that we've been talking about is just the unanswered questions, which I do understand that you leave a bit to the imagination, like we were talking about. When you've got such a good idea, and you've got a really unique way of presenting it, just spending a few more seconds of the film really making sure that some of the loose ends had been tied, I think would have just been the only thing that I would have asked for. So I think I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go a lot less than that.
No. And I think that that's quite harsh for me, because I did leave the film going, yeah, love it. This is a great film. But yeah, it's just little bits of it that I would have wanted to see more.
I think that's a fair score. I I thought you were heading for like a low 7 or something.
Oh no.
I thought you were going to.
But a lot of the things that I love about horror films is I enjoy them a lot. So I really enjoyed this film. So I couldn't give it a low score, because I didn't feel cheated like I did in other films. I didn't feel like I'd lost an hour and a half or 2 hours. Every minute was used and every minute was great. So yeah, I think
we came back from the brink after last week's episode.
We did. We've come back kicking. I hope we don't have a kind of roller coaster of good versus bad films every week.
Oh, bring it on. I want them to bring on some challenges. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to have a special announcement if we ever have a 10 out of 10.
Oh my goodness.
Have to do something.
Well, so I've got one bit of trivia from this film that I thought was very interesting.
Hit me.
So apparently the presence of the white rabbits and the Hall of Mirrors and the red jumpsuits worn by the tethered are actually all references to Alice in Wonderland.
As you said that,
thinking it, the Hall of Mirrors in particular represents Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
While the red suits represent the Red Queen. The villain of the story.
And I suppose having because Alice goes into a new world, doesn't she? And it's
Yeah.
different and it's a bit weird and it's not what she thinks the world should be. Oh, yeah, it's the same thing, I suppose. That's really interesting. I'd never thought of that.
No, and it's like me neither. Probably because I've never watched Alice in Wonderland.
Well, yeah, I think not something for our podcast, I don't think.
No, we're not reviewing that.
We hope you enjoyed this month's Fright Fix. Join us next month as we'll explore a new horror film. We will be posting the movie a few days before the podcast episode is released on our social media, so be sure to follow us at Fright Fix if you want to watch the film ahead of time.
If you would like to send us a message or want us to cover a scary movie on an upcoming episode, please feel free to contact us on Instagram or Twitter, or email us at podcast@frightfix.com.
See you next time.